Welcome to Following Spirit Without Hesitation, Stories from Journeys of Deepening Trust. I'm Tanya, and with me today is Nora Rose Zinerman. Welcome, Nora.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
And so I've known Nora for quite a few years now. Nora's my website designer, but we've become friends over the time that we've worked together. And in my last podcast, that in the last episode, I shared the story about going through a time portal and coming back and cancelling everything. And Nora was one of the people. We were designing a website together at the time, and that was one of the things that I cancelled. And then since then, we've worked together on my current website, and Nora's been really good. I can be quite scattered because I have lots of ideas. And so Nora is very good at being able to consolidate what I bring, as well as have a future vision for what I'm trying to land as well. So I've have a lot of appreciation for Nora's wisdom. And I think, first of all, Nora, I'd like to ask, is there anything else you'd like to say to introduce yourself?
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I absolutely admire your work and the way we collaborate together and the way we work together. It just brings me pleasure, and it's fun and it's challenging. And yeah, to introduce myself, I'm here, present with you in this moment.
Wonderful. So, as you know, the podcast is about following spirit without hesitation. And in our chat earlier, also talking about how things can be spirit led before we more consciously align with our guidance. So, what does following spirit mean for you, Nora?
Um, I've experienced it as like this kind of tug, like here, I'm being kind of pulled. Before I recognize it, I've already been pulled forward in some direction. Sometimes I more consciously can ask for guidance, even in the speed of the moments. Like it can be, do I go right or left? Is this the way we're going? In the car, I get a lot of guidance, which is great. I get ordered to park here, and I'm thinking like, this is a long walk. And then I discovered that because I parked, the road was closed where I was going. So that's kind of the minor things, but following spirit is it's just a way of being accompanied through life, having this companion that I can lean back and rest in how I move through the days.
Beautiful. Yeah, that sitting back, and yeah, that I think, is it that true abiding with spirit? I've heard it, some people call it. So what I'm really curious about is your journey from your corporate work into doing what you're doing now, which is creating soul-based websites for people like myself. Would you like to share some of your stories from that journey?
Yes, yes. So I trained as a graphic designer in Argentina. Um, and when I came to England, I began to work in a corporate environment, a very massive corporation, where we basically were creating design solutions to expensive problems, basically. Um, and it was the most exciting thing of my life, coming from South America, being in this huge environment that was very progressive. I worked with tons and tons of brands creating designs and um, following strategies and precise deadlines has been a fantastic training. Whilst at the same time, I was a little out of integrity because I did not consume the products that they were selling. In my personal life, I had always been curious about spirituality. It used to be called alternative therapies, I think, or alternative
Yeah.
medicine. I can't remember the names anymore, but um, it was always my own personal way of operating in life, but it wasn't anything that I uh, promoted or remotely thought of being part of. It was just how I lived. I was a vegetarian at an early age. And then at some point, life basically had other plans. And I became a single parent. I needed to be more at home because one of my children needed more support. So I left this corporation, which was a very much exciting place. Also, I was a team member um, in the design studio in-house. I never had any intention whatsoever of being a business owner, having an agency, becoming an entrepreneur. In those days, the entrepreneur was becoming fashionable. It was just not my thing. It was just like, that's what other people do. And when I used to play hockey and now I play walking football. I'm still a team member. I serve the stars that do the goals. I'm not the captain, I'm not the goalie. I don't do like the top thing in a team. I'm just a good cog in the whole operation. And being a designer is very much that role as well. You are like a cog behind the business of the client. And I love that positioning, really. It just kind of gives me a lot of pleasure to be strategizing and designing and finding solutions, creative solutions to things. So going back, I became a freelancer, let's say. But very soon I realized I need to run a business because no one was going to do it for me. So I slowly started transitioning into reluctant business owner. And also what began to happen is a lot of my spiritual or alternative interests, the people there, they began to come to me and ask, can you do my brochure? Can you do my logo? Can you do my flyer? Can you do my website? So that began to happen very naturally. I wasn't like seeking anything, but they were obviously attracted by the work, by the availability, I think. And I followed. I wasn't very sure what I was doing, to be frank. As long as I was putting food on the table, it was fine. But then at a festival, at a biodanza festival, on the last day of the festival, there was a workshop which was called Biodanza and Women's Temple. Biodanza and Women's Temple. And I went as a participant. And when I was coming out and when it finished, I had this beautiful, nectar of bliss. And as I'm putting my shoes on, I hear in my head, this is what you wanted to do all your life. And I was like,
I've got chills, you saying that. Yeah, oof.
I was like, what? I'm a designer. I'm a designer. I don't do these things. Um, anyway, I just ignored, put my shoes on, and as I'm walking out of these massive tents, literally before I can cross the portal of the tent, they go really loud. This is what you wanted to do all your life. And I got stopped dead in my tracks, and I was like, whoa. So I turned back. The temp's empty by now, and the teacher's there. And as I'm walking towards her, before I can say, she already holds me. And I said to her, I've just been told this is what I wanted to do all my life. And I just began to cry and shake. I remember the light in that tent. It was just beautiful. And I was just so, you can call it out of control. I was just like not knowing what was happening. It was like a really strong physical experience because, yeah, I was just like, what's happening?
Yeah.
I had done meditation and I had done all sorts of things, but this was like a real identity crisis because it's like, I'm a designer, I don't do these things. These people have gurus and I don't. Anyway, she went to the altar and picked up her photo of Amma, the hugging woman, and she gave it to me and she said, this is for your own altar for when you do your temples. She said, you need to go and see Shamali, find Shamali. I had no clue who Shamali was. And I had all this resistance, but the series of events that followed were incredibly led by spirits. And it was as if I had absolutely no choice in the matter, like no choice ever. So that day I went home, I dutifully, because I'm a good student, so I looked it up. um, And I downloaded the Women's Temple Manual. You could download it for $10. I think it was 2016, 2017. And I read through and I was like, what is this? Like, these words, the words were like, what? But it wasn't going away. And I think the next day I saw one of my friends and I said, what happened? And she said, oh, I'll practice with you.
Wow.
I said,
Just like
okay.
that.
Yeah, yeah. She didn't say like, shall we nothing. Oh yeah, yeah, let's practice together. And I said, I'll be reading from the manual. She said, yeah, that's fine. That was the Friday. We said that was Monday. We said we'll start on Friday. Midweek, another friend says, oh yeah, I'll practice with you as well. And it was like, okay. So we began to meet every Friday. We were, young children. Some of us worked part-time. And I began to lead women's temples from literally spirit's guidance because I didn't understand the words that were coming out of my mouth. They were completely, no, I can't say alien. They were not the words I would use ever in my life in English, which is my second language as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this was like just, I'm getting like this kind of fuzziness in my head as I'm saying it. It was so strong, but they kept coming, and then more women were coming as well. Like, just, it was happening.
Meeting a need.
I
Yeah.
suppose so, yeah. It was just
Yeah.
in my house, and I was making playlists, and the women's temples are silent. There is no speaking. So it was just a great place for all of us to drop inside and be present.
Mm. Sounds beautiful. And I can almost, as you're talking, I can really feel the kind of resonance between you holding that space for the women's temple and then as a doula for people's websites, it feels like it's a very that same energy, right, of being able to hold that space for people.
Yeah, because I was sitting in the unknown all the time.
Yeah.
And I had to, like I said, lean back and relax in that unknown place for me and for the others. And that's partly what happens in a website birthing process.
Yeah.
We sit in uncomfortable places at points with the clients. because
Wow.
sometimes we just don't know. Or there's another layer and it's like, oh my God. So yeah, the holding space capacity, I definitely grew it with the Women's Temple.
Yeah, amazing. So how did that then, I mean, you're there, you're holding space, you're creating and developing and evolving this women's temple, but also your own work is your, your shift in your the work that puts food on your table, as you said, is also shifting and changing through that process.
Not quite.
Okay.
I was very compartmentalized. I was like, I don't dress like these alternative people. I don't have a guru. Like, I don't do all that kind of stuff. I just do the temples and I'm still a designer. It was very much like separate. I think I was quite, I think I wasn't feeling like I was capacitated to do it. Some part of me didn't feel like I wasn't good enough for it because I didn't look the part. I didn't do it on my life, whatever. But the coincidences kept coming, and Shamili, who had not ever taught in England before, turned up in England to facilitate a women's temple 2 months later.
Wow.
Is and I didn't know her. And so when I went into this temple, there's loads of women sitting down. And when the women's temple begins, the woman sitting next to me is Shamili.
Ooh. Oh,
So
amazing.
yeah,
So there's very kind of like spirit led. I
yeah,
just love
totally.
it when, we align or we follow a pull and there's that kind of feeling of almost no choice, right? And
Yes.
then we end up in these amazing, amazing situations.
Yeah. And then the following summer, I went to train because they were running the women's temple facilitator training in Greece. So off I went to get the qualification to be formally. There was such a need to do that. It was incredible. I needed the paper. And the most bizarre thing happened when I went into that beautiful octagon. I was very perimenopausal as well. When I went in and I saw Shamali again and all the women, I thought, oh, fuck, this is what happens when people find their teacher, their guru. Oh my God, she's my teacher. Again, it was like, this is not happening to me.
This is not what I do.
No.
I think that's the beauty of what happens where, I mean, I also had an experience of keeping my kind of everyday life separate from my spiritual life for a long, long time. And then there comes a point when you're starting to weave them together, and it's like, how do they fit?
Yes.
How does that happen? And yet it does. So I'm curious about the rest of your journey now and how that did happen.
Yeah, it did happen. Yes. Yes. So I was going for the piece of paper, but then I found my teacher. Um, so I facilitated Women's Temple for a good 2 years, I would say, on and off, time, time permitting. And at some point, I think I tried with some clients or with a group of people, I can't remember. I began to try some of the practices I used to do with the Women's Temple, but I adapted them to the design process. And the results began to be like, because as a designer, it's so easy to go, oh, okay, give me the photos, give me the words, and I'll do something really amazing. Yeah, a
Yeah.
beautiful website, which is fine. I'm not saying that's not, obviously experience allows you to create amazing design solutions. But what I was finding is that a lot of my more alternative spiritual clients, they really didn't know their brand. They really didn't understand what was at the core of what they were doing. And I began to expand the initial discovery process instead of it being like a week, get to know you, give me the assets, blah, blah, blah. And also I was being provided with awful photos and awful words that I knew they were not right. So I just had to create a methodology because I just couldn't stand being given bad photos.
I think we've got a
Coming
story
from
about
corporate.
photos.
Oh yeah, that's how many photo shoots, Tanya?
Yeah, that was my inner teenager, right? It's like,
That's
yeah,
exciting.
jeans, t-shirt, and a welly. That's what's authentic for me.
Yeah, there's communication. We're doing communication here with a website. Yeah.
Yeah, so you were starting that process. You were starting to remedy those awful photographs and words.
Yes, it just began to happen quite naturally as I began to do some of the meditations, adapted to finding the core essence of your brand, to really tuning into, because the women's temple is very much an embodied experience. The mind really crumbles, the mind kind of, it's not it disappears, but I began to understand that all of these personal brands, business owners, they really have they've been given gifts, they've been given, a frequency of something that they transmit and they teach, a body of work that they need to put out into the world. So this body of work can't just be ABC. It has nuances, it has, details that are sometimes so imperceptible, so almost like invisible, but they're there. So I needed these, and I knew those things were there because I was feeling them. So I needed for these things to be articulated and communicated. And so business owners needed to be responsible for how they communicated and for how they put out their brand. It wasn't just me translating. We needed to collaborate in
Yeah,
this birthing.
beautiful. Yeah, and it's it really helps from my personal experience, helps with landing what it is we're bringing into the earth, and also helping to make it comprehensive as
Yeah,
well, sort of for others to be able to connect with what we're doing. So
yeah.
it's really, really important work. Wow, what a journey, Nora.
Yes.
Yeah,
Was
and
yeah, it
yeah,
was amazing.
yeah. So have you any other, within all of that, within the women's temples, within the um sort of soul brand alignments of really like connecting in with the frequency holders, right, that we all are,
Yes.
being able to bring that into birthing. Have you any other stories around that you'd like, that pop up right now, that you would like to share?
Um, they just said your own story. Um, I think, I suppose at the time I also had to really align my own website, stop pretending to be just a designer and to own up and be responsible for what I was bringing, to own my own frequency, to talk to the niche that I'm talking to be intentional with my communication. Because the more I narrowed down, how I communicate, the more the aligned people come, and the more the not aligned people don't come. So it's very straightforward, and it's easy, and it's simple. And I still don't dress like an alternative person. So I didn't have to do that for my photos, which was, quite a struggle at the time. It took me months to distill my own essence and to own up what I wanted to communicate. As the kind of middle person between my clients and the clients. I'm only kind of facilitating in the middle, how this client of mine wants to create resonance with their clients. And
Yeah.
it's just that thing that happens in the middle. That's the website I do. It's bang in the middle.
Yeah. Which is what I was picking up on when I was feeling how that women's temple and the websites and how those containers that seem so vastly different are actually energetically very, very similar. Yeah.
Yes, I actually, yeah, I haven't thought about it that way.
Mm.
It's also a website is a container for the business owner's creations.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I think Nora's familiar with the arms and legs of mine. So,
Oh,
um,
honestly, your website is just like fantastic because it holds such a library, a body of work, a body of wisdom. And yeah, I mean, it's just the behind the scenes of that website is complex, but yet the front, client facing side feels simple and easy to navigate.
yeah, yeah, which I mean, I've shared in other places before that it took me 5 years of trying to do it by myself, right? Before I think you were the first person and the last person I've worked with on a website. I just couldn't do it for myself because I think what's really important is learning to see how other people see yourself, which as well you had to do that process for yourself.
Yes.
So I can see how complex that is, but also that distillation is also important so that
Yeah.
um, we it's that communication as well.
It is. Yeah, because really, when I am designing my own website or when I'm designing for someone else, it's really not about me. Yes, I hold the frequency. Yes, I offer a body of work. Yes, I do X, Y, Z. But at the end of the day, the people that come to that container are the ones that are creating the whole interaction, the whole opportunity for me to be of service. And it was the same in the temple. I couldn't do temple on my own. It was just me holding that frequency that made those women, create the temple. They
Yeah,
they they were doing it with me there, just me, my presence, sitting there and holding.
yeah. And I think the thing that's coming up for me now around that is authenticity. So the closer we
Mhm.
are to our own authenticity and our own soul essence, we will attract those who are resonant with what it is that we are bringing. And again, that space that you hold enables to really hone in on what that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a part that I always say as well, when you are, well, when people are communicating on a website and they want to be true to themselves, authentic, you got to be you, all those kind of phrases. Um, there's a, there's a fine line there. I'm not bearing my soul on my website. I'm not sharing all my vulnerable parts and details of my life. I'm just communicating the frequency of my work.
Beautiful. That's, yeah. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, Nora. It's been really lovely, and I've really enjoyed hearing more about your journey, which I've, I know over the years I've heard parts of, but now I've heard it, as that beautiful unfoldment. So thank you so much for sharing
Oh,
and being a guest here.
it's been a pleasure. I love this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So sending all of you who are watching and listening with much love from my heart to yours.